He had hammered himself for 12 years. Every morning, every fast, every cold night on a thin mat. And now a teacher looked at him and pointed not at his achievement, but at something still tied around his waist. Something he had not noticed. Something he had put there himself. The workshop was not large. The ceiling was low. The walls were the color of old smoke. A single arched window let in a strip of grey morning light, and that light fell directly onto the anvil as though the room had been built for no other purpose than this one object. The man who worked in this place had come here young. He had come with very little: a coarse robe, worn sandals, and a desire so sharp it felt like hunger. He had heard that this workshop produced something no market could sell. He knocked on the door, and he was let in. The teacher didn't explain what the work was. He simply gave the young man tasks. Carry water from the well to the kitchen. Sweep the courtyard before anyone else is awake. Mend the torn edge of the kilim in the eastern room. The young man did each task without asking why. Weeks passed, then months. Other students came and went. Some stayed for a season and then returned to their towns. The young man stayed. He slept on the same thin mat. He ate the same plain food. He did not complain, and he did not ask for recognition. He simply continued. The teacher watched. He rarely spoke directly to the young man. He would pass through a room and glance at the swept floor or the filled jug, and then move on. The young man learned to read these silences as a kind of language. Absence of criticism became a form of approval. After the first year, the teacher asked him to sit beside the anvil each morning and watch the iron being worked, not to touch it, only to watch. The young man sat on a low wooden stool and watched the hammer fall again and again on the hot metal until his eyes ached from the light. He did not know what he was watching for. He watched anyway. He noticed how the iron changed. It began hard and resistant. The hammer struck, and it barely moved. Then slowly, with heat and repeated blows, it softened. It began to take the shape the smith intended. The young man filed this observation away. By the third year, he was permitted to hold the tongs. By the fifth, he was permitted to strike the metal himself, under direction. By the seventh, he could hear in the sound of the hammer whether the iron was ready or not. He did not need to be told. He had learned to listen to the material. The discipline was strict. He fasted on set days. He slept only a few hours. He kept silence during certain hours of the day. He did not touch money. He did not go to the market. He did not visit his family. He had chosen this enclosure, and he held to it without wavering. Other students who passed through the workshop sometimes struggled with the silence or the fasting and would speak to him seeking sympathy. He gave them little, not cruelty, but he had learned to protect his discipline as one protects a flame in wind. He kept his cupped hands around it always. By the 9th year, the teacher began to speak to him more directly. Short sentences, observations about the work. He would say, "The iron does not resist anymore," or "Watch how the surface holds the light now." The young man listened and felt something warm move through him. Pride, though he would not have named it that. By the 11th year, other students in the workshop began to look at him differently. They came to him with questions. They watched how he moved through the daily tasks. There was a quietness about him, that younger students read as depth. He accepted their attention without turning it away. In the 12th year, the teacher called him to the center of the workshop and stood him before the anvil. He told him to look at his own reflection in the polished surface of the iron. The young man looked. He saw a face, his own, and beneath the face, he saw the belt around his waist. The belt was old. He had worn it since the beginning. It was a plain belt, leather, dark with age. But the teacher now pointed at it and said only this: "That belt is not part of the work. It is what you use to carry the work. And now the work is done, but the belt is still there." The young man did not understand immediately. He looked at the belt. He looked at the teacher. The teacher said nothing more and left the room. The young man stood alone in the workshop for a long time. The lamp burned. The anvil held its polished surface. The belt lay where it always had. That night, he sat with the question. He had done everything asked of him. He had not broken the fasts. He had not abandoned the silence. He had not sought comfort. He had held the discipline for 12 years without a single deliberate failure. What was the teacher pointing at? What remained? He began to look more carefully at himself, not at his actions, those were clean, but at the feeling beneath the actions. And there, underneath the discipline, underneath the silence, underneath the years of correct behavior, he found something he had not expected: a quiet, settled satisfaction with himself. He had known for years that he was doing it correctly. He had known without speaking it that he was further along than the others. He had kept this knowledge quietly, privately, as a man keeps a small coin in a hidden pocket, never spending it, never showing it, but always aware that it is there. He returned to the teacher the next morning. He said, "I think I understand what the belt is." The teacher waited. He said, "The belt is my certainty that I have done this well." The teacher looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "Yes, and now you must undo it. That will take longer than the work itself. 5 more years." The teacher gave him no new tasks. He was to continue exactly as before. Same fasting, same silence, same work at the anvil. But now he was to watch the satisfaction every time it appeared and refuse to rest in it. Not destroy it with force, simply not sit down inside it. It was harder than anything before. The fasting had been hard on the body. The silence had been hard on the tongue. But this, watching the pride rise like heat from a forge and refusing to warm himself in it, this was a different kind of difficulty. It had no visible shape. He could not measure his progress. Now the lesson can be named. The young man had spent 12 years building real discipline, and that discipline was real. It was not false. The fasting happened. The silence happened. The work was genuine. But inside the genuine work, something else had grown alongside it, unnoticed, fed by every year of correct behavior. Pride in your own discipline is the most difficult pride to see. It does not look like arrogance. It looks like dedication. It feels like earned confidence. And because it grew inside something genuinely good, it carries the smell of the good thing. You cannot separate them by looking at the outside of your behavior. There is also a humility that is a costume. A man can speak humbly, walk humbly, lower his eyes in every room, and still carry a private record of how humbly he has behaved. The record itself is the problem. The moment you begin keeping score of your own lowness, The lowness is gone. What remains is bookkeeping. Spiritual scorekeeping is invisible from the outside. No one around you can see it. You may not be able to see it yourself for years. It lives in the feeling of being further along, in the mild impatience with those who have not yet understood what you understand, in the quiet comfort of your own consistency. The teacher did not tell the young man to stop the discipline. He told him to continue it and to stop feeding on it. The difference between those two things is the difference between 12 years of work and 17. The first 12 built something real. The last 5 removed what the first 12 had quietly installed alongside the real thing. By the 17th year, the teacher called him once more to the anvil. He told him to look at the surface again. The young man looked. He saw the reflection. He saw his own face. And this time, below the face, he saw nothing attached. The belt was gone, not removed by force, but simply no longer needed. The teacher looked at him and said only this: "Now, the work and the worker are the same thing." There is no one left inside who is proud of how far he has walked. He has simply walked. And the young man stood in the quiet workshop in the late light, and for the first time in 17 years, he had nothing